The fusion manifold gave out with a sound like a dying whale, and Juno Reyes knew she was in trouble. Alone in deep space aboard the aging freighter Calypso, she stared at the blank console and listened to the eerie quiet settle in. No hum of life support, no reactor pulse, just silence, cold and unforgiving. She'd been coasting on faith and duct tape for months now, and space had finally decided to collect her debt. She floated in the dark corridor, wiping sweat and oil from her forehead with a shaky glove. Everything inside her screamed to panic, but she didn't. This ship wasn't just a vessel, it was her home, her partner, her only constant. Juno reached for her tools and began the long, painful process of rebuilding from the inside out, pulling parts from her own sleeping quarters, gutting the backup medbay, even rewiring the old food processor to regulate power. 3 days passed with no real sleep, only stim patches and stubborn resolve. She didn't just repair, she recreated. With the core barely stitched together, she flipped the main breaker. The lights flickered, engines sputtered, a low, uncertain hum answered. That was enough. Enough to live. Enough to move. Enough to survive. As she slumped in the pilot's seat, cradling a cracked mug of recycled coffee, a new light blinked on the console, one she hadn't seen since her academy days. Long-range transmission, narrow beam, unencrypted. Juno sat up straight. The signal was faint, wrapped in interference, but it was there. Not human, not any species she recognized. The translator strained to parse it, finally delivering a fragmented plea: assistance, life forms, cryostasis, power failing. It wasn't the kind of thing you just ignored, but it was risky. Her own ship was barely held together. One course correction too sharp and she'd lose main power again. Yet Juno stared at the star map. The signal was close, half a parsec at most, drifting on the edge of a crumbled moon's gravity well. Whoever sent that call was running out of time. Juno closed her eyes and sighed. The easy path would be to keep floating, conserve fuel, head toward the trade route, and survive another day. But that wasn't her way. She was a Reyes, and Reyes didn't walk past broken things. She keyed in the coordinates and fired the engines. The alien ship was unlike anything she'd ever encountered. Elegant, organic, like a seashell spun into the void. Its hull shimmered like the inside of a pearl, pockmarked by micrometeors and power scars. Juno drifted through the docking tube with a sense of awe and caution. Her boots touched down on soft, pulsating metal floors that seemed alive beneath her feet. She followed flickering beacons to a cryo chamber filled with fluid light and low chimes. 6 pods stood in a circle. 5 were empty, flickering red. The 6th glowed faintly. Inside was a tall being, silver-skinned, humanoid, and serene in appearance. Thin blue light traced a network of veins through his body like stars in motion. His eyes were closed, his breath shallow. Life signs were critical. Juno didn't hesitate. She bypassed the failing systems, rerouted auxiliary power from her own suit, and initiated revival protocol. When the chamber hissed open, he collapsed, and she caught him. He was surprisingly light, warm. And despite the danger, a strange calm filled her chest. She wasn't alone anymore. He woke slowly, his first words in a tongue the translator struggled to decipher. But his eyes, deep silver with motes of light swirling within, locked on hers with clarity. He called himself Kalen, of the Veyari, explorers who traveled not by war or conquest but by cultivating life across systems. His ship had been carrying bioseeds to terraform barren moons. A solar flare had crippled everything. He'd stayed awake too long to save his crew. Now, he was the only one left. Over the next several days, Juno helped him recover. She shared her food, her tools, her story. In return, Kalen showed her the strange organic tech of his vessel. He fixed her failing thermal shield in hours, tuned her sublight engines with crystalline amplifiers. His touch was precise, elegant. He worked with her, not above her. They learned to laugh through translation glitches, to build even when they couldn't fully explain how. They worked side by side, Juno with her grease-stained hands and welding goggles, Kalen with quiet gestures and luminous blueprints made of thought and light. Calypso began to transform. Her patchwork wiring and squeaky bulkheads now carried graceful alien power nodes that pulsed like a heartbeat. The ship was no longer just running, it was thriving. Late one night, while tightening an auxiliary coolant line, their hands touched. They both paused. It was small, accidental. But something passed between them, recognition maybe, or possibility. Juno didn't know what to say. She'd fixed hundreds of ships, but Kalen wasn't a problem to solve or a passenger to drop off. He was becoming part of her story. Kalen, too, felt it. The Vayari didn't form bonds easily. Their culture was slow, measured, attuned to patterns in stars and roots. But Juno was wild, fierce, entirely human. She solved problems not with perfection, but with passion. It both frightened and fascinated him. He asked one night about Earth, about family, about what it meant to belong. She didn't give a polished answer, just a story about her mother's wrench, the scrapyard where she learned to weld, and how she sometimes sang old jazz to calm her nerves while fixing reactors. And then she asked him to dance. There was no music, only the pulse of the ship and the rhythm of their breath. But when he took her hand, they moved like they'd known each other longer than light had existed. The repairs were complete. Kalen's ship could fly again. His mission could continue. He had offers from Vayari sanctuaries, science stations, diplomats, and Juno? She could finally return to the colonies, sell her upgraded freighter, and retire rich. Their crossroads had arrived. "I can go," Kalen said one morning, standing in the quiet of Calypso's bridge, "but I do not want to." Juno looked at him, her chest tight. "Then stay," she whispered. "This ship, my life, it's not much, but it's real, and it's yours if you want it." Kalen nodded and kissed her, gentle and deliberate. In that moment, stars seemed less infinite than what had just begun. They chose no ceremony, no pomp, just each other. Beneath the canopy of a nebula glowing pink and violet, they stood on the Calypso's outer hull and made promises. No rings, just a bent bolt she tied to a string and gave to him. In Vayari custom, he offered a seed that glowed faintly in her palm, meant to be planted when a life began anew. The galaxy moved on, but for them, time seemed to slow. They flew to forgotten moons, delivered aid, repaired stranded ships. Everywhere they went, people spoke of the human and her starborn companion, a living myth, two hearts against the vacuum. And one day, when Juno touched her stomach and realized what the seed had really meant, she cried, then laughed until she couldn't breathe. Their daughter was born on a drifting orbital station repurposed as a nursery outpost. Keelan sang in his native tone hymns. Juno gripped his hand, swearing like an asteroid miner between contractions. Lyra entered the universe with a scream and eyes that shimmered like starlight over oil. She was curious from the start. She tried to repair her hover crib at 9 months, walked at 10, spoke in 2 languages by 1.5. They had to child-proof the fusion vent after she climbed inside to check for heat leaks. Juno looked at her and saw the best of both worlds, stubborn, brilliant, fearless. Kalen looked at her and saw something entirely new, hope. 2 years later, a son followed Orion. He was quieter than his sister, but strong and centered like the gravity of a world. His laugh could shake a room. He loved floating in zero-G, chasing shadows and asking questions like, what makes a star know when to explode? Juno and Kalen built a new wing on Calypso just for them. Tiny bunk beds, a learning core, and a dome to watch the stars. Their ship was no longer a lifeboat. It was a home, a heartbeat. And even in the chaos of parenting and power fluctuations, they never forgot what they had built together. The Calypso became legend, not because it was the fastest or the most armed, but because it was alive, a symbol of unity, of resilience. People said if you were lost, the human mechanic might find you. If you were broken, her family would fix you. Lyra grew into a prodigy pilot. Orion built language bridges between species. Together, they carried the spirit of their parents, curiosity, compassion, and the courage to trust the unknown. Juno often sat on the deck with Kalen at night, watching their children laugh among the stars. "This was never the reward I expected," she said once, voice soft. "But it was the one you earned," he replied. Juno Reyes never set out to change the galaxy. She just wanted to keep her ship flying. But in saving a stranger, she rewrote the constellations of her life, becoming not just a mechanic, but a mother, a lover, a legend. Kalen had left a dying world and found rebirthed of a woman who fixed everything with her bare hands and infinite heart. Their love didn't just cross species, it redefined what it meant to belong. In the end, it wasn't the ship that carried them, it was the family they built inside it.